Quick question,
Pew-pew.
do happy people actually live longer? We've been sharing all sorts of strategies for happiness, whether it's gratitude, fighting gaslighting, processing trauma, or just enjoying a bit of legal cannabis. But we've been operating under an assumption that one of you guys managed to call us out on, and frankly, we cannot get this question out of our head. On the one hand, you would think the answer is yes, but then if stereotypes are to be believed, the people who live to be the oldest are bitter and sticking around out of pure spite. Not to mention that there are things that we know tend to make us happy, but are also kind of bad for our health. Sugar, alcohol, fatty foods, other forms of debauchery. So are there any health benefits to happiness itself, especially the kind that can offset the stuff that it takes to get it? Or is chasing happiness just a recipe to get yourself in the ground faster?
Turns out this is actually a trickier question to answer than you might think. A lot of initial research seems to indicate that, yes, happiness plays a big role in overall longevity. But if you look closer, a lot of that research doesn't do a very good job at proving that happiness itself is what's driving that longevity. For starters, how do we even define happiness in the first place? Most studies that attempt to measure happiness rely on self-reported data. And while it might initially make sense to just ask people how happy they are, that also makes the data highly subjective. Say someone rates their happiness level as a 5 out of 10. That person's level 5 could be a level 8 for someone like me who struggles with clinical depression and anxiety. And that's assuming that we all use the same criteria to define happiness. Say that person is more materialistic and tends to view happiness in terms of their ability to have nice things and enjoy exclusive experiences, whereas I might define it in terms of my close relationships or lack thereof. For many, part of happiness would almost certainly involve being in good health, which would then trap this question in a sort of chicken and egg paradox of which came first. Did health cause happiness or the other way around? As it stands, we know that a lot of what makes people miserable is also associated with poor health outcomes. And we're not just talking about the fact that poor health outcomes are likely to make people miserable. Other factors such as poverty and stress have shown to both affect your health and, surprise, surprise, also make you miserable. But even though we can be confident that minimizing those factors can make a person healthier and less miserable, there's way more to happiness than just an absence of misery.
One of the largest and most comprehensive studies on this subject illustrates this very conundrum. It was called the UK 1 Million Women Study, and it aggregated electronic survey data on health and happiness from around 720,000 women in the UK in their 50s and 60s, which is less than a million, but still a pretty good amount. It then aggregated that data and predicted each subject's chance of dying over the next 8 to 13 years. And initially, the data seemed to suggest that, yes, happy people do tend to live longer, and less happy people tend to die sooner. Except when they controlled for health factors, they found no significant relationship between happiness and longevity. Instead, they found that it was poor health that was making these women miserable and making them die sooner. Not to mention that the survey collected happiness data by asking these women how often they experienced emotions like joy, pleasure, pride, and enthusiasm. These are all emotions associated with our dopamine receptors. Dopamine, of course, being the neurotransmitter associated with motivation, reward, and satisfaction. Stimulating these receptors feels good, but the feeling is not meant to last, and that is by design. That made sure that our early ancestors didn't stay satisfied with one good meal or one mating encounter. But in today's world, it means that no matter how awesome an accomplishment or a situation or an experience is, the high is going to wear off. And according to studies, constantly chasing that high can actually work against you and your mental well-being.
Compare that to emotions like gratitude, optimism, and self-esteem. These positive emotional states aren't as dependent on a situation so much as an outlook. And we can carry that outlook across all situations that are both good and bad. Say you get a flat tire. Chances are that you're not going to be very happy about it. But it is still possible to approach the situation with a more positive emotional outlook. You can be grateful that you've got a spare tire in your trunk. You can be optimistic and assure yourself that this will only be a minor setback to your week. You can have confidence in your ability to fix this problem and any others that come your way. This approach not only helps you better ride out the natural peaks and valleys of life, it also provides much more reliable data in order to determine if there is a link between positive emotions and longer life. There are assessments like the Life Orientation Test and the Optimism-Pessimism Scale, which are able to more accurately measure people of various backgrounds and circumstances on a consistent scale. And when they compared these scales, they found some pretty remarkable results. Not only did more positive outlooks correlate with longer lifespan, optimism and positivity appeared to protect study subjects from all sorts of bad health outcomes. In various studies, positivity has shown to decrease risk of everything from heart disease to chronic pain to stroke. It's shown to decrease the risk of death in cancer patients. Optimism has even shown to decrease your chances of getting sick if you're exposed to a cold virus. And while we're still not exactly sure why optimism and positivity are apparently so good at enhancing your physical health, we do know that stress has plenty of negative side effects. Okay, well, I know I'd like to stick around for a while, so how do I get in on this kind of action?
We've already covered one positive habit in a previous episode that you can start practicing every single day: gratitude. Start by listing 3 things at the beginning or end of every single day, but remember, you've got to think of different things every time and you've got to feel it. Just like gratitude, optimism is also a skill that you can get better at with practice. So if you find yourself in a situation that you're not exactly happy about, practice reframing it. What is the silver lining? And more importantly, what is the lesson you can take away to benefit you and others? And speaking of others, one of the most reliable ways to enhance emotional well-being is to foster close and healthy relationships. So instead of saying to somebody, hey, we should hang out sometime, make it a point to actually set aside time and follow through. Set goals for each and every day that are both specific and achievable. So instead of saying something like, I'm gonna clean my house today, say something more specific like, I'm gonna sweep and vacuum my floors and wipe down my countertops today. While it's not mandatory, doing one or more of these things in a journal can help give structure to your routine and hold you accountable. And this might sound a bit Joker-esque, but practice smiling. Seriously, set aside a minute or 2 of your day and just practice smiling. I'm serious. It can actually help prime you towards more positive thinking.